Welcome everyone to today's episode to the Michelle Pascoe Hospitality Podcast. I'm Michelle Pascoe, and today I have a wonderful, true, long-term friend and masterminder from a number of years ago, Glin Bayley. Now, I've had Glin on a number of years ago as she is one of the top negotiators in the world. Now, you may think negotiation, oh, but it's a very interesting topic, and she is the absolute gem when we talk about negotiation. So, let me give you a little bit of background. Glin is a strategist, a writer, and negotiation consultant who teaches full spectrum negotiation, the kind that transform both outcomes and identity. Known for her clear, compassionate presence and sharp strategic mind, she helps leaders and change makers renegotiate their relationship with themselves so they can lead, influence, and create from deep alignment. Her work bridges inner transformation with external impact, helping people build success that actually feels like their own. Welcome, Glin, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Michelle. I feel like I need to cut that bio down, right? There's a
No,
lot to fill in.
it is wonderful, but I think that's sort of given us a little bit of the peripheral of what you actually do. So my first question is, your career shifted from global commercial finance to founding Simply Glin. What was that turning point that made you step away from traditional leadership roles to pursue values-based leadership and negotiation?
I feel like there's a circular moment, Michelle, when I first started my business and left corporate. My business was called Simply Glin. And at the time, it had happened because I was tired of being in commercial finance. I felt like I wasn't actually operating in alignment with myself and what was true for me, right? And we all have these like inner negotiations about what should I do? Where should I spend my time?
Yes.
Is this it? Like, is this what my career is supposed to look like?
Mm.
And so I took a leap of faith then and started in self-leadership coaching, executive coaching. And then what was very fascinating, because the business was called Simply Glin, but I wasn't ready to own fully being myself in a business world. And I think when you're in the corporate environment, or if you're working for an organization, it's so easy to take on the identity of the organizations that you work
Mm.
with and for. And I realized a few months in, I'm like, oh, this feels very exposing to be in my own brand. So
Mm.
I started Heart of Human.
Mm.
I created a separate label, had that, delivered negotiation training, and not negotiation training, executive training and coaching through that. And then when COVID hit, it was an opportunity for reassessment. And at that time, in the world where everything was in lockdown, you're questioning your life's choices again. And I was working by myself, living in Sydney with my closest friends outside of the 5K radius.
Mm.
And I just thought, oh my God, what am I doing? So I ended up back in corporate for a short while where I trained negotiation skills to large corporates. So I actually ended up working for the organization that I had trained with way back in 2007.
Gosh.
And it was felt like a full circle moment in that. I'm like, this is really weird. I've, left corporate, started my own business, then gone back in, but in a completely different space in using my commercial skills and then my negotiation capability to train other organizations.
Mm.
And after 18 months of that, I realized I still don't want to work with a corporate,
Yes.
but it was good clarity. This
Mm.
time I left and I thought, right, well, I love negotiation. It brings all of my self-leadership, exec coaching skills and capabilities in that, but it's speaking to commercial outcomes. So this is
Mm.
great. Set up the value negotiator as a business identity. And 2.5 years of running the value negotiator training, corporates and commercial negotiation skills, I'm there questioning again, going, what's happening? Like, I love what I do, but there's something about I've got the heart of human identity, I've got the value negotiator
Mm.
identity. And the reality is, Michelle, it's just me. I do
Yes.
not want to grow a large corporate business
Mm.
or a company that scales with hundreds of people.
Mm.
And so when I got present to what was actually true for me and got past the inner negotiation that I had with my own self, I realized actually where I had started was exactly where I needed to return to, which was simply Glyn. But
Mm.
that journey took me 7 years to essentially
Right.
come back to myself. Now I do what I say full spectrum negotiation because what I'm actually bringing is the internal negotiation around your self identity and who you're being and how you're addressing that
Mm.
inner understanding of yourself and marrying that with the external negotiation capability to say, well, if you know how to negotiate with yourself,
Mm.
and your ability, when you stop with that mental chatter in your mind, you have more silence, the capability that you can then develop in negotiating externally with others is going to be far more valuable to you
Mm.
than it would have been if you're negotiating externally, but you've still got this mind chatter going on about, oh,
Yes.
can I say that? Can I ask for this?
Mm.
What happens if they reject me? And it's all this inner dialogue in your head that's distracting you from the ability to create more value externally.
Yeah. I love and thank you so much for sharing that full circle because, people just, oh, well, here I've started this business and I've been in business, or this is what I'm very good at, or this is my skill set. But just to share that with us shows you that we do need to negotiate with ourselves sometimes, don't we? And
Yeah.
be honest and go, maybe I've got this idea, but that's not what my true calling is. And I think it's quite game also to negotiate with yourself and go, well, what are those outcomes? But it's something that
Yeah.
we all need to do. So I'd love to learn more about that. So,
Yeah.
Glenn, you mentioned that about that full spectrum
Mm,
negotiation and how it begins from within. Can you
yeah.
just share what that looks like in practice and how internal alignment influences the external success?
Yeah, 100%. So if I use my example just to try and make it real,
Mm.
you've got that inner voice inside that's, questioning, can I really do this?
Mm.
What will people think of me? If I say that, what happens if people don't like what I've asked for? And we sort of shrink ourselves to be more palatable because we think asking for, say a higher salary or asking for a higher price point when we're dealing with clients,
Mm.
or even asking for, boundaries around the time we spend, in the
Mm.
workplace or with our family, what might be the impact of that. And I found for me, my biggest negotiation internally was this sense of, I need to be the value negotiator. And so,
Mm.
what does a value negotiator need to share?
Mm.
Everyone to be credible. Or when it was Heart of Human, what do my executive women need me to be? And that constant thinking about who others needed me to be
Mm.
made me lose internally who I needed to be for myself. And
Right.
I just like, oh, like I'm asking who does everyone else need me to be, but each one required me to feel like as if I was being a performance, not
Yeah.
consciously, but this like, unconscious state of I'm performing for others. I'm
Mm.
not being truly and authentically myself.
Yes.
And when I got present to the fact that my performance externally, when I'm then teaching negotiation skills, was the mirror that I received when I'm watching the people I'm teaching negotiation skills to get less than they could get.
Mm.
And when we unpacked it and we watched the videos back and we'd see their reactions and we're like, what happened in that moment? What was the thought in your head?
Mm.
It all came back to this inner dialogue that they were having around, well, oh, I thought if I do this, then this would happen. And then so I thought I wouldn't ask for that. And then I hesitated and then I looked awkward. And then, and then I just started tripping over my words. And so I'm like, oh, right, it's not just a me thing. It's everyone's got this constant mind chatter
Mm.
that's stopping them from just owning where they're at to recognize that chatter's there, but
Yes.
is it pulling you away from what your heart really knows you need to
Yes.
speak out and what you need
Mm,
to share.
mm,
And when I could see that, I learned to silence it. I wouldn't say that silencing comes easy, but when you can start to see that it's not actually serving the outcome that you want
mm,
and that it's a distraction, it's then noticing that distraction, putting it to one side and saying, well, if I can be all of me, if I can be present
mm,
with myself and not in a performance, not trying to prove anything,
mm.
how can my presence, me being authentically me, then transfer into the person that I'm working with? And how can they feel supported and looked after? And when
Yeah.
I think about the work you do in hospitality, right, how many people experience someone in the hospitality industry that is completely not present with
Yes.
themselves?
Yes.
And therefore, if they're not present, they're not present to you as a customer, as an
Mm,
experience, and you feel that distance or that separation from someone who's in their mind
yes.
having some dialogue about all their chores, all the things they've
Mm,
got to do, all of the challenges around staffing or whatever
mm.
might be on their mind. And all this chatter's going on, but they can't then be present with the work that they're there to do or the people that they're there to help.
Yes, yeah. And then when they're not present and they're not here, they miss things. There's
Yeah.
misunderstandings, that miscommunication, productivity may slow down. And it
Yeah.
all comes down just that moment of, as you said, just being present and realizing that yes, we all have this inner chatter that goes on in our minds.
Yeah.
How do we silence or just take note and say yes, but then really focus on that person. Because I think that's what that key is. Because people can see, can't they, Glenn, when you're actually really present with them, that you're engaged, you're not
Correct.
just nodding your head and thinking to yourself, oh, geez, come on, I've got 1,000 other things to do.
And it comes back to like in the book I wrote around negotiation, I use a acronym called value to break out like a negotiation process. But if
Mm,
I think about that first word, like the word itself, and then the first acronym, V stands for value, it's what do you actually value?
mm,
And when you think about what you value, and then you think about what does your customer, client, supplier, family member, friend, what do they value? You're then starting to think about, well, okay, well, if I value being authentically myself, I value people in my company to feel seen, heard, and understood. And if I believe they would value receiving that, then I can show up in a way that meets them with what they need, and I get to be my authentic self.
yes.
But it is about taking that pause to go, okay, this mental chatter is going to get in the way. But
Mm,
if I can get really clear on what I truly value, then what I value is going to be pulling me towards the future I want to create
mm,
rather than the noise of the current, self-doubt, the
yes.
insecurities, the
Mm,
the mental chatter, the stress, all the things that you've got on your mind that you worry about. You can put them to one side and say, well, I value the person that I want to
yes.
become
Mm.
more than this noise that's been holding me back.
Yes, yeah. And it's that belief in yourself, isn't it? And not everybody
Hugely.
has that inside them. And, they're not always around people that will support them on that journey. So it does. It comes down to ourselves as individuals that we've got to believe. You've got to value with what we offer. It's so
Yeah.
important. You mentioned, Glyn, then about authoring one of your books. Now, I know you've actually got three books, each tackling a unique aspect of personal and professional growth. What
Mm.
unites is Unstoppable Woman,
Mhm.
Healing After Heartbreak, and the Negotiation Playbook in their core message. What's that one link?
The
Is there
threat,
a one link?
yeah, there actually is, but I didn't know at the time. The thread is all about the journey of becoming your most authentic self.
Right. Mm,
And stepping into your own personal power.
mm,
Because Healing After Heartbreak was a book, it was a selection of poems that I'd written, but it was also a guided sort of healing journey that I had written that was my journey through healing after my divorce and my
mm,
separation. And I had moved over to Australia, was trying to build a new life while still I guess healing from that heartbreak. And I called the book Healing After Heartbreak, and it was how I processed the loss of the dreams that I thought I was going to be creating and fulfilling.
Mm,
And so I realized then that was a healing journey, but it was also about me stepping into a space of personal power and agency because I wasn't a victim to the, oh my God, woe is me, I'm now a statistic and,
mm.
gosh, what an awful thing. And I'll never find love again. And all of that drama, that inner narrative that we might tell
Yes.
ourselves. And then Unstoppable Woman became a codified way of showing that self-leadership journey in a way that people can say, well, okay, I've healed, but what was that really? It was a journey from my head to my heart to say,
Yes.
okay, how do we do? And we talked about that in the heart framework when we last spoke, and that was about personal self-leadership and personal
Mm,
power. The value negotiator, when I was in that sort of business identity, which I still do negotiation skills, but all under Simply Glin now, the negotiation playbook was all about like when you're stepping into your heart, then you can focus on the value you
mm,
create. And so that was all about, okay, I'm in my power. How do I now create value consistently for myself, but also the people that I work with?
mm.
And when I look back now and go, oh my God, that was all a journey of becoming. It's messy, it's not linear. I wish growth was like straightforward, but it's not.
Mm,
Um, but it's showing people the skills that I had developed through a season of my life each time, and then
mm,
sharing those skills to say, well, this is what's worked for me, this is what I've learned.
mm.
Perhaps you might get something from the journey too if you have resonance with where you're at with my story.
Yes, yeah. Now those books are still available through your
They
website
are,
and
yeah,
Amazon,
so yeah,
etc.
so they're on my website and then through Amazon. So yeah.
Perfect. Well, we'll put some links in the show note, but that's simply glin.com.au
Yes, it is. Yes.
or just
Yeah, just.com.
just
Yeah.
.com.
Yeah, and
Perfect.
I
But
feel
we'll,
like this is the one. I'm sticking with this.
then
No,
this is
no,
it.
no new business brands. Everything else still links to this website. So my Heart of Human and the Value Negotiator still link here, but this is the core home now for everything
Yes.
that I
Yeah.
do.
So it's that you've got that thread and you've pulled it all together. It's not
Yeah.
unraveling, it's come together.
It's all, yeah, absolutely. It all makes sense. And it's
Yes,
funny,
it
isn't it? Because
does. It
we
does.
sometimes we sometimes think our lives are like, you know, we're going off in different
Yes.
directions. But
Mm.
actually there isn't. There is a core thread. You've just got to slow down and be present enough to say, oh gosh, okay, I see
That's
now
it.
why this all has
Yes.
unfolded the way it has.
And why it has, that's true.
Yeah.
Now, this idea of negotiating with yourself is an extremely powerful one.
Yeah.
How can leaders begin to consciously renegotiate their own internal dialogue to lead with authenticity and clarity? Because particularly these words authenticity, and we've heard it, we use that quite a lot. And some people go, oh, are they really being authentic or are they just doing what the label is saying to them? So, what are your thoughts there about, how do they
Yeah.
renegotiate that dialogue within?
Yeah, totally. And I wish I could say I've got the exact formula at this
Yeah.
point in time. I am working deeper to codify that journey to help connect the two. Um, the key thing for me is when you're negotiating with yourself, there is a voice that's chattering inside, right?
Mm,
And there's probably multiple voices, and the opportunity we have is to discern which voice is the one from fear
mm,
and which voice, or that it might be in a knowing, it might not be a actual conversation or a chatter, but it's this felt or sensed experience is one from love, right? And
mm,
if we were to kind of break down the emotions of the world, I mean, like there's millions of emotions, but if we were to say, really, let's hold love in one hand and fear in the other,
mm.
I can use any thought that I have in my mind and filter it through, and I will know whether it's filtered through love or fear.
Yes.
And that's what I started to pay attention to, was like based on what I valued, I wanted to show up more powerfully in my negotiation work. I wanted to write more. I wanted to share more of my knowledge and experience.
Mm.
And when I'm like, like my dream, I want to be a New York Times best-selling author, having a conversation with Oprah about
Mm.
one of the books that I've written, right? And it sounds wild and radical and impossible and crazy from where I sit today. But I know the voice through fear would say, "Well, that's silly. Who do you think you are? What
Yes.
what what capabilities do you think you have to think you can write a book that would be so good that millions will read it around the world
Mm.
and that Oprah will even, want to interview about it?" And that's fear, right? Because
Yes.
if I listen to that voice, then I don't ever want to get started because what's the
Mm.
point, right? Because it's saying there is no point in me starting this path because clearly I'm never going to get where
Exactly.
I said where I want to go.
Mm.
Whereas the voice of love says, you know, does the thought of that excite you, energize you? Does it light you up? And I'm like, yes. It's like, and what would your life look like if you were allow yourself to dream and imagine having that? Oh my God, it'd feel amazing.
Yes.
Great. So where would you start? Well, I'd just start with getting some words on a page, perhaps, and doing the next step. And
Mm.
I think when you filter through that, you can go, okay, that inner negotiation that I'm having with myself, there's voices, but what am I filtering those voices through?
Yeah.
And if I can see which one's filtered through love, then I'm more likely to take the next step, and I'm a long way off from, writing that book and meeting Oprah. But what I do know now is that inner negotiation isn't stopping me from taking the right action
Mm.
towards the future I actually want to create. And then more externally, I'll negotiate more powerfully because I'm not now negotiating with myself.
Mm. Oh, thank you for that. And it's true. It's that you've it's understanding what you're looking for, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then putting some guides or parameters around that, some stepping stones, as you said, with
Yeah.
that negotiation to achieve what you want. And yes, it may sound, oh, is that far-fetched that that you're going to be there being interviewed by Oprah and having, but then if not you, then who? So why
Yeah.
not you?
Why not?
Why not? I think that's what's really key. I think that's where that self-doubt, and as you said, we no longer negotiate with ourselves. Instead, we just allow that fear to
Yeah.
take over
Yeah.
instead of you can do this. And do you feel
Correct.
also, Glyn, that it is the people that surround you, and sometimes it's not always your family or your loved one. You've got to seek out. Do you think that makes a big difference as well? Those that you actually spend time with and listen to?
100%, right? I think if you are unconscious to the way you're living your life, a
Mm.
product of the environment that you're in, right? And so you have to be really present. Consciousness is a sense of being present to what's
Mm.
actually occurring in your life and noticing and observing what you're seeing happening
Mm.
around you. Um, and I think the people around you will have a huge part to play in that. But if you're not present, you won't see whether the people around you are holding you back or
Mm.
whether they're helping elevate you towards the greatest possibilities that you could achieve in your lifetime. So
Mm.
your environment absolutely plays a part, but it comes back to the internal dialogue and that negotiation we're having with ourselves is to I've got to be present. And I say this with my external negotiation, commercial negotiation clients, is if you can't be present in the room
Mm.
because you're in your head, you're going to miss information being given to you through what people say, through what people do,
Mm.
through how their body language is communicating things. And if you're not present, you'll miss all of that
Yes.
intelligence. So
Mm.
you have to be present to access the intelligence in the world around you, in the environment that you're in, because the environment you're in will always be giving you clues as to, is this going to help me or is this going to hinder me?
Yeah, and you invite the environment certainly does. People leaning in or leaning out. The way the whole body language can make such an impact, or
Huge.
that, or asking those questions, or having that look on their face, that smile to support you. And if you're not focused on that or not paying attention, then
Attention.
you miss those absolute gems that will help you on your way, which is fantastic.
Totally. And
Mm,
it's interesting because, like, I had an experience at a cafe only yesterday. I'd gone to lunch, and the lady came out. We were sitting outside. The lady came out to take our order,
mm,
and she took our order. And then, as soon as she'd taken our order, said, she was like, "Great, can I take payment for that now?" And I looked like really confused.
mm.
I'm confused. Like, it's like, yes, there's a QR code on the table, but I haven't used the QR code to pay. This is table service. So why am I being
Yes.
asked to pay up front? So I
Mm.
said, is the policy change? What's changed? I said, oh, we've had a lot of people basically eat and
Yeah,
leave
and
and
run.
not pay, right? And eat and run. That's it. And I was like, oh, I'm really sorry to hear that. But it was fascinating because I'm like, they've clearly experienced enough such that it's required a shift in policy. But
Mm,
I also thought, is there now a brand and an experience that you've foregone? Because,
mm.
like, for me, I'm like, that's just taken away from the experience of table service if you're being asked to pay
Yes.
when someone's taking your order. Like, it felt weird and not in alignment. And I just thought, well, imagine if you were present to one who we were, how we've carried ourselves. If you were present, you'd have seen I've been to that same place like a gazillion times because I live around the corner.
Yes. Yes.
You'd
Mm,
know, right? And
mm.
again, if you're present to what your customers are doing and needing, you'll spot things because you're scanning for the environment
Mm.
around to notice is someone looking shifty because they're looking to eat and run,
Yes.
or have we got an issue with a lack of service
Mm.
because people aren't being reminded, hey, you've got to come inside to pay before you leave. And I've forgotten in the past, and then I've gone, oh shoot, I haven't paid. So
Yes.
let me go back inside to the till. And for me, it's a lot about how much are we noticing about our environment around us so that
Mm.
we can choose again more powerfully.
Yes, yeah. And look, it is right. It's knowing, who our customers are and having that environment. But then I suppose that, they may have different staff coming on, and then
Yeah,
people go, well, why didn't she pay? Why do I have to pay? And then it becomes another.
of
It's
course.
communicating. So whether that's
Correct.
through signage or just, letting you know right from the very start the conversation. And you could openly say, unfortunately, due to people, enjoying a beautiful meal and then, going off and forgetting to pay, when I take your order, I'll be taking payment. And I'm sure you
Yeah, and yeah,
find
correct.
that be
Communicate that.
okay.
So yes,
Yes, yeah. It's a
100%.
it's a way of doing it. I actually I had an experience, and this reminds me of, being present. I went to on Monday to our local post office to post my daughter's wedding invitations. So,
Mm.
I had a fair chunk, and I go up to the counter. Today, when I'm recording, this is Thursday, right? So it's 4 days ago. I go in and I say to the young girl at the counter, "Oh, I'd measure one, yes, $3 each." And I said, fine. So I said, I'll have 40 of those. And she goes, oh, and then she just disappears. And out comes the new post office commander, because that's what she was like, comes out and just glares at me across the thing. And she goes, are you posting these before Thursday, in this voice? And I looked at her and went, yes, yes, like this. She goes, well, are you? And because I'm thinking, well, yes, yes, I am. I said, is there an issue? And she goes, they go up in price on Thursday. And I went, right. And so I said, well, can I have them now? Because I'm got them, showed them,
Yeah,
took them. And she goes, oh, yes, yes. And it was just hot. But I thought to myself, how did
pass
she
it on.
approach that? She could have come out and said, look, just letting you know, if you post these after Thursday, you'll have to put additional stamps on. So are you, like, it could have been a real different way. My husband
Yeah.
goes into the same post office yesterday. He comes home last night and he goes, holy moly, have you met that new manager? I said, yes. And he goes, she says to me, she goes, he goes, I'm being served by the man who's been there for years. He goes, I just want to buy a book of 10 stamps. And he goes, I can't, no, we don't. And my husband goes, what do you mean? And he goes, I can't sell them to you. And Graham goes, but do you have them there? And he goes, yes, we have them out the back, but we're not allowed to sell them to you. And he goes, and next minute, she barks from the other side of the post office. Nobody's allowed to buy any stamps. They go up on Thursday in this dreadful voice. And you're thinking, wait on, this just seems really odd. I want to post a letter today, which is yesterday, 24 hours before the price goes up. Why
Yeah.
are you stopping me posting? I didn't think anything was allowed to get in front of the postal service. I think it became like this Mexican
And so,
standoff,
yeah,
so to
wow.
speak. And then and my husband goes, right, so none of us can post letters today because you're not willing to send us a stamp. I thought that was really odd. So in
It's
that
very
form,
odd.
really, really very poorly handled, lack of communication. And so my husband said, that's it. We're selling the house. We're moving to the next town to go to another post. But Glenn, it was just that moment in time. I think lack of customer service, lack of communication, lack of
Huge.
reading the room.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
clearly she's got some dialogue in her head where she's trying to prove how important
Yes.
how wise she is about the fact that here's the rules, this is what you're going to operate by.
Mm.
And she's not present to the fact that the environment around her is full of people who just want to post their things. And so what if the price goes up? Like historically, stamps get phased out. Anyone that's got a book of stamps will just use it. And on the other side, most often it's delivered. But if it's, within the first 6 months of those stamp prices changing, but if it's 2 years later, you might get
Yes. Yes.
hey, you're going to have to pay extra before you can receive your
It
receive
was
your
just, it
product.
was
How
just
bizarre.
bizarre. Yeah, in that sense of just stopping people buying a stamp because in 24 hours it goes up. It's already in
Love
the
that.
post. So negotiation skills she
Oh,
definitely needed.
needed. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
100%. Understand what
So
your customer values,
and
right?
yes, well, just no values. And for this new young girl who was in training, and obviously she'd been trained by this lady because there was a lot of old, we live in an area
Yeah.
of older people. So they're standing there and they'd go up to this young girl and they'd go, oh, I'm here about, and it could be a passport or wants to pay a bill. She goes, I can't do that.
Oh my gosh.
And she kept repeating, I can't do that. And then you could see these older people going, sorry. She goes, oh, I'm in training. I can only sell stamps. I'm thinking, once again, you could quite easily say, I'm actually in
Oh,
training. I can only sell stamps, but I actually can't. But anyway, but I'm thinking,
oh
this
my
is just,
goodness.
you could see people going, this is just crazy, chaotic mess.
Yeah.
There's people
Yeah.
going everywhere. And I'm thinking, they need you, Glenn. They need the
Yeah.
negotiator because
Oh my God. Seriously, that is wild.
it is, and I'm just seeing it, everybody is just walks away not getting what they wanted or not even
Front.
understanding why they couldn't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%. And those kind of environments I just love because
yeah,
it's the opportunity to really flex your skill set to
yes,
say, right, how can I demonstrate respectfully, professionally,
mm,
how do I get what I want?
yes,
And help the other person see,
yeah,
whether they want to or not, what
yeah,
the opportunity is that that they have agency. They don't have to stick with silly rules, that,
yes,
they can, negotiate the right outcome for
mm,
everyone if they
yes,
learn how to negotiate with, like in this case, with the commander of the post office,
yes,
right?
yes.
Because she's changing things up, but not all of that's for the better.
No, that's right. And all the staff have left bar this one man, and
Oh
he's probably
gosh.
due for retirement. So we were thinking, oh, I'll just hold him. But it's
Yeah.
just that impact of not understanding, as you said, those values, knowing who your customer is, but can
Yeah.
impact going forward your whole business.
100%.
Yes, yeah.
100%.
Very,
Hugely.
yes,
Hugely,
very much
hugely.
so. Now,
Yeah.
look, we all have newsletters, but I love your newsletter, Glenn, and because it's called Glin and Tonic, punchline there. It's got a really distinctive name. But what inspired that, and what kind of conversations and ideas do you aim to share with your readers? Because, as I said, I will certainly put a link there. I
Yeah.
know my audience, my listeners will be thinking, how can we actually work with Glenn and find out more? But a lot of people will say, oh, we've got this newsletter, and then after a few weeks, you think, oh my gosh, I'm not even opening it now. It's just a whole lot of sell, sell, sell. So tell me, what do you share in your newsletter that makes it what
Honestly,
you share? Yes.
it's a weekly heart to heart.
Right. Okay,
It's a
cool.
weekly heart to heart. based on my real life challenges, and what I'm learning each and every
Mm.
week. And
Yes.
I share it. And that's why it's called Glin Tonic. One, my dog, I thought I was going to call Tonic so that we could be Glin and Tonic. And then I was like, oh, the thought of like shouting tonic
Okay.
in the park didn't quite sit right. So I'm like, okay, so it can't be my dog. What can it be? And I'm like, oh, great, newsletter. Like I can create, a interaction where it's like, Glyn, being me, and
Yes.
then Tonic being my tonic through sharing my
Yes.
real life and my journey.
Mm.
And then I thought, well, if I'm sharing like, here's what's worked for me, or here's what I've learned, or oh my God, you never guess what, this is what's happened this week, then maybe other people will receive the tonic that they need
Yes.
for a particular challenge that they're facing in. And it changes. It could be from, I think a couple of weeks ago I was having an issue with um, a couple of friends where we had a different idea of what our expectations were in the evening.
Mm.
We'd gone out and I decided I didn't want to be out anymore, but I'd then been designated driver and I'm like, oh gosh, how do I negotiate myself out of this
Yes.
one? And and I write about the challenge that was,
Mm.
even, in my 40s, I'm like, how are we still communicating as if we're like girls in the schoolyard, like, afraid of upsetting each other,
Yes.
So I talk about everything, anything that I'm being challenged by, whether it's business, whether it's personal,
Mm.
whether it's health, whether it's mental health, whether it's, oh my God, I didn't know that about myself and now I see myself clearly. So
Yes.
I
Yeah.
just think in a world where there's a lot of AI generated content,
Mm.
and I'm all for like using AI for making life easier,
Mm.
but I also know I really want to be able to share like what's true and what's authentic, and
Yes.
and so yeah, so like I would say from a selling perspective, it's like the worst sales engine going because it doesn't sell anything. It might point to the odd, like, here's a quiz you can take, or here's something, or here's a book you
Yes.
can buy. And often it's like other people's stuff. So it's definitely not a sales engine. But you know what? It's the one thing that makes me feel so authentically myself every single week. And I
Yes.
have been doing it for years. And it's one
Mm.
thing that I've stuck to doing, I should say,
Mm.
because it feels so true and aligned.
Yeah.
So yeah, just but that was a negotiation to get to the point of just allowing myself to write um, what I wanted to write.
Yes.
We're
Mm.
often, we're in a world of like, what does your customer need to hear? What does the
Yes.
avatar want? And like,
Yes.
yeah.
Mm. Yeah. I love that. I think
Yeah, I
that's
was like, I don't
fantastic.
know what they want. I'm too immersed in like observing how my world is uh,
Yes.
unfolding. And then I realized, oh, maybe that's what they want. Like
Mm.
maybe that like me just being like this ridiculously messy journey of a human is
Yes.
is
Exactly.
enough.
That's right. And people can see themselves in it. So thank
Right.
you. So I'll put that link there.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Glenn, many of my listeners are in the hospitality industry here in Australia and overseas. They, like many senior managers or even middle managers, operate in a high pressure, fast paced environment. Even our frontline teams, it gets very busy at different points at time. So it is that high pressure. What advice would you give to those leaders on integrating that emotional intelligence into the negotiation style?
Yeah. So when you're in a high pressured environment, it is likely that sometimes we're in our sort of survival part of our brain. It's like, oh
Yes.
my God, it's flight, fight,
Mm.
freeze. I've just got to deal with all these problems. And then the ability to think clearly diminishes if we've let our limbic system, which is like, the back of the brain, back of our heads, if I'm pointing to my head, so for those that are listening, to the back of my head at the moment, um, that's, that stops us being in our executive center. So our executive center is the front of our head. I'm pointing to my forehead. And when the blood rush of like, oh my God, I'm stressed, I need to solve this. I just need to get things moving, happens. The blood rushes from the front to the back,
Right.
and we stop um, being logical and rational, and we're in our emotional brain.
Mm.
So when we're in our emotional brain, you're dealing with feelings, and the intelligent part
Yes.
of that gets lost.
Mm.
So what I would first say to anyone is the more you can anticipate that you are going to be in an environment that is going to trigger your stress levels
Mm.
and where things might get crazy, and the more prepared you are for that environment that you're going to be
Yes.
in, the more able you're able, the more you're able to stay present.
Mm.
When you stay present, you stay in your executive center. And when you're in your executive center, you have the ability to regulate your emotions, to not let
Mm.
your stress leak out through your body, to not let your stress leak out through your words,
Mm.
because certainly in a negotiation environment, it's high pressure, it's high stakes. There's a
Yeah.
lot of money involved often with the deals that the teams I work with are
Mm.
negotiating. And what will happen is if they get stressed, they can't speak clearly, they can't think clearly, they can't communicate clearly. So
Mm.
you have to be able to anticipate that level of stress and then have a plan around, well, what will I do when I feel that? And
Yes.
it might be, I need to, before I move from one activity to the next, I'm just going to take a 30-second pause
Mm.
and remind myself where I am, who I am,
Yes.
and what my work is. And it's
Mm.
back to being present and being conscious. Because if I can be present with myself, then I can pull myself back into my logic brain, which
Mm.
allows me to then emotionally think about someone else's experience, to think
Yes.
about how my team are going to need to be supported, to think about how I need to make sure that I remain calm so that I create a calm environment around me.
Mm.
So there's a lot in it. It definitely takes practice, but I would say the more you can anticipate an environment being chaotic and then have a plan in place to execute when you're in it, then better you'll be. A lot of what you may do this in your work, I think you do, role playing
Mm.
and showing people different situations and scenarios and asking people what they would do or how they would handle that or putting them under that um, stress
Mm.
induced environment. I do that in negotiation practice. I put them under a stress induced environment. I give them a time frame. I give them a scenario, and I give them, here's a negotiation you have to work through,
Mm.
and people get activated. And it's like, okay, cool. I'm really glad you've got activated here, because now you've experienced that, your ability to hold a higher level of tolerance for that externally is going to be far greater. And it will feel like when you're doing it externally in real time, it will feel like you're doing it in slow motion because you've anticipated it, because you felt that,
Mm.
your limbic system, your emotional brain kick in, and no, okay, need to breathe, let that, centering happen so I can return back into my logic brain at
Yes.
my executive center.
Yeah. And it is, that it's that tolerant point, isn't it? Because, we've been saying for a while now, the customer or the client of today seems to be, less tolerant than they once were.
Yeah.
They expect everything to be now. They do expect that it's all about me and that they are always right. And coming into a conversation or a situation like that, where you are under a lot of pressure and perhaps you've got somebody who is quite aggressive, both verbally and maybe even
Yeah.
physically, you're really right there. It's about, Glyn, that negotiation of how am I going to handle this? How am I going, what am I going to do? Am I going to mirror their image, or am I going to be thinking about what am I going to be saying? How am I going to be standing?
Yeah.
Because do you find that body language also plays a
Hugely.
major impact?
Massive.
Yes.
Body language carries 55% of the communication, more so than words. So the words you use only carry 7% of the communication of the message.
Yes.
Your
Mm.
tone carries 38%. So the tone you use is
Mm.
going to carry 38% of the message. So if you're saying, um, it's really great to see you, and the
Yes.
tone does not really match,
Yes. Yes.
people are going to be looking for congruence of the message through
Mm.
your tone and your body language. So
Yes.
it's really important for the congruence of the message that your words, your tone, and your body language match. In an environment where you've got a really difficult customer and they're agitated, what I often say, and again, in negotiation environments, we experience that, right? People don't get the proposal they want, they get agitated. So I would be okay with labeling someone's emotion. Um, I'm sorry, sir, you seem really agitated right now. I can see this experience is upsetting you. Can we take a moment? Can I just ask you to take a moment, pause, because I can see you're upset and I really want you to feel okay before we continue this conversation, right? So you're not in defense mode. You're not trying to protect or defend your behavior or your team's behavior or explain away why something's happened. And in a negotiation, when someone starts justifying why something's happened, it occurs as you're explaining from a place of weakness, right? And I therefore don't want you to fall into justification and explaining because it puts you in a weaker position. That's not to say you won't offer something, but it's how you offer that clarity to the other party so that you're not coming from a place of weakness. So if you address someone's emotions first and say, hey, I see you're really agitated. I see this is really important to you. And
Yes.
this experience hasn't met your expectations.
Mm,
Can we take a minute? Can I just get you to take a breath
mm,
so that I can find a way to address this with you
mm.
to a point that we can both be satisfied with the outcome, right?
Yes.
So the party feels heard and seen. Your tone is assertive yet warm and strong.
Mm,
Your body language isn't, oh, I'm pulling away and feeling really threatened by this person. It's
mm.
standing strong and firm and making eye contact. And it's almost like you're playing a soothing role first,
Yes.
help them feel seen, and then you offer, here's what we can offer.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, what you've experienced has not been to the satisfaction.
Mm,
We pride ourselves on X, Y, and Z,
mm.
and that has not met the standard we would hope to hold in
Yes.
our business. So here is what I'm proposing.
Mm,
Here's the offer I'm willing to make.
mm.
But you can't get someone to logically listen to your offer and for you to feel powerful delivering it whilst they are still in an emotional state.
Mm.
So you have to soothe their emotions, take them out of their limbic brain where they've gone into fight, flight, freeze mode. And if they're
Yes.
arguing with you, they're in fight mode, FYI. So
Mm.
you
Yes.
want to get them out of that instinctual response and back into their logic executive center that says, guess what? My logic brain would tell me the way I speak to someone is going to influence the best result I get.
Yes.
And
Yes.
too often people have learned when you're the squeaky wheel or you're loud and aggressive, you get heard.
Yeah.
And yes, you do, but it's only for a short period of time. You
Very much so.
can't use that strategy in the same place over and over and over again, right?
Mm.
So you have to learn how to manage customers such that they want to return to you, but you
Yes.
don't let them have a power imbalance that you're then forever trying to, correct because you want to
Yes.
speak from a position of power so that they respect you and want to come back and see you as the business owner that's trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, and that's right. Not everybody's looking for something for free or just give their money back. They just wish to be heard.
Yes.
And you are right there. It is just calming them and using the right words as you did, Glenn, in just taking a moment, just have a deep breath because you do want to help them. But
Yeah.
you can only help them when you can understand clearly what has occurred, what has been
Mm.
the issue, and then discussing, well, this is what I can offer
Yeah.
you. So thank you for sharing that. I'm
Yeah.
sure you've given my listeners some great tips. I've heard the word your negotiator type. What exactly what does that
Oh,
mean?
yeah.
And how can you engage this negotiator type both in personal life as certainly well in business life?
Yeah. So there's on my website, and you might need the link it's yeah, I think it's on Simply Glin, but it's definitely on the Value Negotiator. I'm in the middle of consolidating my websites, but I've got a quiz that allows you to understand what your type is when it comes to negotiating. And
Mhm.
there's five types. So we've got the general, who's very assertive and direct, and that would have been the commander that you met at the post
Yes.
office. And then we've got like the avoider, the person that doesn't want to negotiate, that sort of, retreats and doesn't want any
Yes.
conflict, so walks
Mhm.
away. Then we've got the accommodator. This is the person that's like, I'll give you your money back, whatever you want,
Yes.
just make it go away because this is like, I want to accommodate your needs rather
Mm.
than my needs. Then you've got the dealer in the middle that's like, okay, well, let's just make a few concessions. We'll meet somewhere in the middle
Mm.
and we'll be okay. And then you've got the diplomat. And the diplomat is the one that each of them have a role to play, and
Mm.
they all have a context where their type would be appropriate. So I want to say that up front. There's no right or wrong in terms of type because you will use all of those at some
Mm.
point in time, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
if someone's being unreasonable, if you're trying to be too reasonable like the accommodator, it's not going to work. So you might have to step up to being general and a bit,
Yes.
aggressive in your stance,
Mm.
um, so that people pay attention.
Mm.
But where I try to move people to is the diplomat where possible, which is really hard because it's the one where you have to still be really polite, warm, and creating value with the other person where they want to engage with you, but it's being assertive enough to get the best outcome for you
Yes.
and them, but
Mm.
primarily you, because you have to lead with, well, does this make sense for my business? Is this the right outcome?
Mm.
But the customer leaves feeling like they got the best outcome for them, which
Yes.
is why I say it's hard because they need to believe they got the best outcome for them, and you need to know that you got the best outcome for you too,
Mm.
right? And it's a really tough balance for people to strike. But what I say is, when people do the type, you get the quiz. It's free quiz. I can't remember how many questions there are, maybe 12 or something. But it gives you a sense of where you currently sit on that spectrum of type. So are you overly accommodating, or are you an avoidant through and through, or are you a general, in which case, like, hey, in certain contexts you might have to soften
Yes.
that.
Mm.
So and I use that to help people see different profiles of personalities that they might also experience. So like,
Yes.
is the customer being a general, in which case,
Mm.
how do I deal with the general,
Yes.
and it gives guidance on how to deal with the general
Mm.
when you're dealing
Perfect.
with someone like that. Yeah.
Let's go. Well, for my listeners, you can go onto the website. I'll put the link there to find out what your negotiator type is. And then perhaps, yes, those that work around you in the leadership team and back in family life. And then you'll all understand, well, how you negotiate and perhaps who does it better than the other as well.
Exactly.
You often speak about, Glyn, about building the success that truly feels like your own. For someone at a crossroads in their career, how can conscious negotiation help redefine what success looks like for someone?
Honestly, the biggest thing, and again, I share from my own experience, is my journey to coming back to Simply Glin as a brand, as an
Mm.
identity, was really a homecoming for me. It was that, oh my God, like I've been trying to build a business in a way that I thought was true to me, but wasn't fully me being all of myself. Like
Right.
a negotiator, I'm an
Mm.
exec coach, I'm
Yes,
an
yes.
ex-commercial finance person. Like I have loads of things that I have done and I've lots of skill sets and experience.
Mm.
And there's the part of me that loves to write poetry. Like to write books.
Mm.
I like to explore more spiritual themes, different modalities, a more holistic look at life. And I felt that in that journey, I was hiding parts of myself. Like
Ah.
when I'm the value negotiator, it was like, well, I can't show my spiritual woo side because
Mm.
people are expecting the value negotiator. And
Yes.
if my spiritual woo, if I wanted to bring some like commercial business thinking, it's like, whoa, like they're expecting this soft, warm,
Yeah.
you know, spiritual woo person, and I'm bringing this really hard edge business guidance and advice. And so I was just hiding parts of myself. And what I say now is this journey to living a life that feels like you, and why it's the negotiation is you've got to be okay with that dialogue in your voice
Mm,
being silenced, where your soul, your heart, your essence, whatever language you want to put to your true being,
mm,
feels like you have got complete full permission to be all of you. And
mm.
then when you give yourself permission to be all of you, then the ability to show up in the
Yes.
work you do, in the environments that you do, will come from a place of alignment of, oh,
Mm,
I'm not hiding anything of me anymore. I'm not too
yes.
much, or I'm not too little, or I'm not needing to shrink, or I'm not needing to project because I'm now having to be someone else. Like you get to be all of you
Mm,
and do the skills that you are trained in to an exceptional level. And I think that's what I realized was my skills were separate to my
yes.
identity. And when
Yeah.
I allowed myself to just step into the identity of just one, like being okay with I'm a writer, I'm a strategist, I'm a negotiation consultant, I'm an ex-accountant. There are a number of labels, but if I attached myself to any one label, I would lose myself. So it's being okay with being a person that's going to grow and change over the years. And I encourage that and letting whichever version of you this season has drawn out of you be integrated
Yes.
with all of the other seasons of you that were drawn out through various parts of your life journey and experience.
Mm. It's wonderful. Thank you so much. Before we finish up, I think we could talk for ages, Glyn, because I know there's so much more that you can share with my listeners, and I know they'd really appreciate what you've shared in relation to those leadership roles, that those hot points in business, whether it's with customers or whether it's with your team, and how we negotiate from being within ourselves. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about your business, but also how can they connect with you that you would like to share, Glyn?
No, I don't think there's anything you've not asked me. I think just follow along on either LinkedIn or my Simply Glin and Tonic blog.
Hmm.
I often share resources around things that I'm working on or what I'm doing, and I have various little things like a secret podcast that I just record that is subscriber only, where it's like, okay. You can only access my voice notes, if you
Mm.
subscribe. But just yeah, come along for the ride if it's of interest, and if it's not, then that's okay too. But I just hope whatever your listeners take from this is take the opportunity to really honor who they want to become
Mm.
and recognize that life, not by a long shot, is linear in its growth. And so if you're in a season of feeling like you're spinning wheels, it's okay. It will make sense at
Yes.
some point in the future.
At some
That's
point.
what I've learned. It
Very
will.
true. And it brings us back to that full circle moment. Thank you so much, Glyn, for joining me today. Listeners, you can learn more about Glyn and connect with her, as she mentioned, on LinkedIn, but also at her website, simplyglyn.com. Thank you so much, Glyn, and take care.
Thank you.